Minecraft horror story, The Doomsday Siren. The first warning came at sunrise, when every redstone lamp in the village turned black. Steve stood on the roof of the watchtower with a spyglass. Below him, farmers stopped beside their crops. The iron golem froze near the well. Even the smoke above the blacksmith stopped moving, hanging in the air as if the world had paused. Then a message appeared across the sky. Doomsday begins in 7 days. The words were red. They stretched from one horizon to the other, brighter than the square sun. After 5 seconds they vanished. Sound returned all at once. Villagers shouted. Sheep bleated inside their pen. The blacksmith chimney released a burst of trapped smoke. Steve looked at his friend Tessa, the village engineer. Was that a command? Tessa opened the server console book. Its pages were blank. No command was entered. The village bell rang. No one stood beside it. One slow note rolled across the plains. A second answered from the dark oak forest to the north. That answer was deeper, louder, and wrong. It began as a bell, changed into an air raid siren, then ended with a voice counting down from 7. Steve raised the spyglass. At the forest edge stood something taller than the trees. Its body looked like a dead trunk until it moved. Long arms unfolded from its sides. 2 metal sirens turned above a thin neck. Wires hung between them. One horn pointed at the village. Inside its dark mouth, rows of pale teeth moved around a red light. Siren head, Tessa said. The creature stepped backward and became still. For a moment, it was only another tree. Then it was gone. That evening, Steve called everyone into the meeting hall. Tessa spread maps across a table. Garrick, the village guard captain, stood by the door in iron armor. Nia, their potion maker, brought crates from the brewing room. 18 villagers crowded behind them. They knew stories about Siren Head. It copied voices. It hid among trees. It could break buildings and chase players for great distances. What they had seen was worse. It had changed the sky without using the console. 7 days may be a threat, Garrick said, or it may be a timer. Tessa pointed to the maps. 3 old warning towers surround this region. The builders before us linked them with redstone under the ground. If something has taken control of that line, it could reach every bell, lamp, and piston we own. Steve remembered the lamps dying before the message. We cut the line. We have to find where it was changed first. Otherwise, we lose the only warning system between here and the other villages. Garrick wanted to evacuate at once. The nearest safe settlement was Snowcap, 1,200 blocks west. Steve agreed to send the villagers there while he, Tessa, Garrick, and Nia inspected the towers. At sunset, they loaded food and beds into carts. The road west crossed open land, far from the forest. Iron golems walked beside the group. Steve watched them pass the last torch and felt some fear leave him. Then a villager at the rear called, "Wait." He had heard his daughter crying inside a wheat field. His daughter was already in the first cart. The wheat moved in a straight line toward him. Steve fired an arrow. Something thin and black pulled back into the crops. A siren sounded under the ground. "Do not follow any voice," Steve shouted. "Keep moving." The caravan reached the West Hill. All 18 villagers were present. The 2 golems were present. The carts were full. Steve counted 19 shadows. One long shadow stretched between the carts, though nothing stood above it. When the square sun touched the horizon, the shadow rose. It became two legs, then a narrow body. Siren Head unfolded from the flat road as if it had been hiding inside the light. Garrick rang a hand bell and ordered the golems forward. The first iron golem struck the creature's knee. Siren Head bent, caught it, and pushed the golem into one of its horns. Metal screamed against metal. The golem disappeared into the black opening. The left siren began making the sound of iron footsteps. The second golem attacked. A blast from the right horn threw it across the road and through a tree. Steve placed TNT under the creature and lit it. The blast covered the hill in smoke. When the smoke cleared, Siren Head was already among the carts. Its fingers searched between the villagers. Nia threw a splash potion of slowness. Blue swirls covered its legs, but it kept moving. Garrick cut one finger with an enchanted axe. Dark fluid struck the grass and turned nearby flowers grey. The creature played a baby villager's cry. Panic broke the line. Villagers ran in every direction. Steve used rockets and his elytra to fly above them. He saw Tessa leading a group toward the river and Garrick guarding the carts. He also saw 3 siren heads standing on distant hills. They were not moving. One was a spruce watchtower. One was a narrow cliff. One was the shadow of a ruined portal. The creature's sirens had filled the air with false shapes. Steve dropped onto the main siren head's shoulders and drove his diamond sword into a wire bundle. Red sparks burst out. The sky message returned for 1 second. Doomsday begins in 6 days, 11 hours, 42 minutes. Siren Head reached back. Steve jumped and fired a rocket before its hand closed. Below, Tessa placed a line of powder snow across the road. The creature stepped into it and sank to its waist. Garrick shouted for the villagers to run. They reached Snowcap after midnight with 14 survivors. 4 villagers and 1 golem were gone. Siren Head did not follow past the frozen river. It stood on the far bank, playing the voices of the missing. At dawn, it raised one arm and pointed east, toward Steve's village. Then it spoke in Steve's voice. "Come home." Day 6 appeared over the sky. Steve, Tessa, Garrick, and Nia left Snowcap before breakfast. They could not wait 6 days while the creature changed the world. Their first target was the North Warning Tower, an old cobblestone structure inside the dark oak forest. They traveled through a tunnel to avoid the surface. Tessa followed the buried redstone cable. Every repeater pointed toward the village, carrying a signal from the north. "This line was built to send warnings out," she said. "Someone reversed it." They reached a maintenance room beneath the tower. The iron door was open. Redstone dust covered the floor, but it was not red. It was black and wet. Nia touched a glass bottle to it. The dust crawled into the bottle by itself. From above came Garrick's voice. "It is safe. Come up." Garrick was standing beside Steve. They sealed the stairway and dug through the wall. Roots filled the earth beyond. Mixed among them were black wires. The wires wrapped around redstone torches, repeaters, and comparators. They pulsed each time the distant siren sounded. Tessa broke a wire. The tower screamed. Cobblestone blocks moved outward. Long wooden supports unfolded like ribs. The roof split into 2 horns. The warning tower was not beside Siren Head. It had become part of Siren Head. A huge hand came through the maintenance ceiling. Steve and the others fled down the cable tunnel while the tower tore itself from the ground. Roots snapped, stone fell, the cable behind them lit with a black signal. The signal was faster than they were. Every iron door in the tunnel slammed shut. Pistons pushed blocks into their path, dispensers fired arrows from hidden walls. Tessa used her pickaxe to break through a door while Steve shielded the group. Nia found the cable junction and poured water across it. The redstone broke into items. The traps stopped. For 1 second, there was silence. Then the broken redstone items crawled across the floor and joined again. "It is alive," Nia said. They escaped through a ravine and destroyed the tunnel behind them. Above the trees, the transformed warning tower walked east on 4 wooden legs. The 2 roof horns broadcast the countdown. Day 5. The next morning arrived early. The moon fell below the horizon after only 3 hours. Crops grew and died in seconds. Zombies burned, became skeletons, then returned as zombies when the light changed. Siren Head was changing the game ticks. Steve's team reached the second warning tower in a Badlands canyon. This tower was made of copper and had a lightning rod on top. No monster waited outside. The door opened normally. Inside, they found a player named Elias chained to the redstone control board with leads. He had lived alone in the Badlands for years. 3 nights earlier, he heard his brother calling from the tower. His brother had died in the Nether. When Elias entered, black wires came from the control board and pushed into his back. "It asks me questions," Elias whispered. "It wants to know how the world ends." Steve cut the leads. "What did you tell it?" "Everything players know. Withers, end crystals, commands, the dragon, the void." The tower bell rang above them. Elias's eyes turned black. He spoke with the creature's siren voice. "Thank you." The floor opened. A beam of black light fired into the sky. Clouds formed in a circle above the tower, and lightning struck the copper roof again and again. Each bolt traveled down the redstone line toward the east. Tessa studied the machine. "It is charging something beneath our village." Elias grabbed Nia. Wires pushed from his sleeves and wrapped around her neck. Garrick struck him with the flat of his axe. Steve pulled Nia free. Elias begged them not to hurt him, then laughed in the voice of a child, then made the hiss of a creeper. Steve cut the black wires instead of attacking Elias. The player fell unconscious. They destroyed the copper tower with TNT. When it fell, lightning stopped. The sky message flickered. "Doomsday delayed by 0003. Only 3 seconds. Elias woke after sunset. He remembered a chamber under Steve's village. The creature had shown it to him through the wires. Inside was a redstone device called the Last Bell. Ancient builders had made it to warn every settlement during a world-ending event. It was never finished because its signal did more than ring bells. It forced every loaded chunk to copy the same event. If fire reached one linked chunk, all linked chunks burned. If a wither spawned in one, all spawned a wither. If the void opened in one place, it opened everywhere. Siren Head wanted to use its own scream as the copied event. At 0, Elias said, "Every block in the world will hear it." Day 4. They returned east by Nether Tunnel. The world outside had become unstable. Rain fell upward. Pigs stood on walls. A village floated 50 blocks above the ground with no land beneath it. Every few minutes, all animals stopped and faced north. The original Siren Head followed at a distance. It no longer hid. It walked across hills with one horn playing the countdown and the other repeating the sounds of breaking blocks. Elias traveled with them. He could sense the black signal. At an abandoned fortress, he stopped and pointed into a lava wall. "It is here too." Behind the lava was a wire thicker than a minecart rail. It ran through the nether toward Steve's portal. Siren Head had used the shorter nether distance to connect every tower. Tessa proposed cutting the wire in several places at once. Steve and Garrick would travel ahead. Tessa, Nia, and Elias would remain at the fortress. They agreed to break their sections when the clock reached noon. At noon, Steve swung his axe. The wire moved. It wrapped around Garrick's leg and pulled him into a side tunnel. Steve followed. The tunnel ended above a lava lake, where hundreds of black wires formed a nest. Items hung inside: tools, armor, bells, jukeboxes, player heads, and pieces of iron golems. Garrick hung above the lava. The siren copied his voice from inside the nest. "Cut the wire, Steve." Steve saw the trick. The real Garrick's mouth was covered. The voice wanted him to strike the line holding Garrick. Steve threw an ender pearl onto the far wall, teleported, and caught Garrick with a fishing rod. He pulled him onto a ledge, then placed a bed inside the nether nest. The explosion destroyed half the wires. Across the fortress, more explosions answered. Tessa's team had cut their section. The countdown vanished from the sky. They cheered for exactly 8 seconds. Then every item in the wire nest began to speak. Hundreds of stolen voices counted together. 4, 3, 2, 1. The wire pieces joined into the shape of a thin giant. 2 bells rose where its head should be. A smaller siren head stepped out of the nest. Then another formed behind it. And another. The team ran through the fortress while wire creatures climbed from every broken section. They were only 6 blocks tall, but they moved quickly and could fit through doors. Their bell heads copied the voice of anyone they touched. Garrick held a bridge while the others escaped. He knocked 2 creatures into lava. A third wrapped around his armor. Steve cut it free, but another reached from beneath the bridge and pulled Garrick down. His hand caught the edge. Steve grabbed him. From the lava below, Siren Head used the voice of Garrick's missing wife. "Let go," it said softly. "I am here." Garrick looked down. The wire around his arm tightened, and he was pulled from Steve's grip. He fell into the dark space between the bridge and the lava. There was no death message. Seconds later, every small creature spoke in Garrick's voice. "Keep moving, Captain." Steve, Tessa, Nia, and Elias reached the portal with the wire pack behind them. They entered the overworld and broke the frame. The smaller creatures struck the purple light just before it closed. Day 3. The message had returned. Snowcap was empty when they arrived. Beds were still warm. Food sat on tables. A line of footprints led from the village toward the frozen river and stopped at the bank. All 14 villagers had walked into the water. Tessa found them beneath the ice. They stood on the river floor in neat rows, alive but motionless. Black wires ran from their backs into the mud. Steve broke the ice. Nia used water-breathing potions and cut the wires. One by one, the villagers floated to the surface. Most remembered nothing. A child remembered hearing the old village bell and following her mother's voice. Her mother had been missing since the first attack. The last villager they freed opened his eyes and screamed. The sound came from every bell in Snowcap. Roofs shook. Windows broke. The original siren head rose on the far side of the river. It had changed again. Bells, copper, iron, and pieces of the North Tower covered its chest. Its two horns were larger. Redstone light ran through the cracks in its body. Tessa ordered everyone into the mines. Steve stayed behind with TNT. Siren Head crossed the frozen river in 3 steps. Steve lit the first charge and flew. The blast broke the ice under one leg, but the creature caught itself on the village wall. Its right horn broadcast Garrick's last words. Its left played the death sounds of the missing villagers. Steve fired a channeling trident into its copper chest. Lightning struck. The creature froze. Every redstone line in its body shone white. The countdown skipped backward from 3 days to 4. "Lightning hurts the signal," Steve said when he reached the mine. Tessa shook her head. "There will be no storm on the final day. It is changing the weather table. We need to bring our own lightning." They had one charged creeper trapped in a glass cell beneath Steve's village. It had been part of Tessa's mob museum. If they could lead it to the last bell chamber and make it explode beside the control core, the charged blast might destroy the black signal. They traveled underground with the rescued villagers. Siren Head followed above. Its footsteps opened cracks in the ceiling. Every time someone spoke, one horn repeated the words from directly overhead. At midnight, they reached the village border. Their home was gone. In its place stood a machine the size of a mountain. The North Warning Tower formed one leg. The Copper Tower formed another. Farms, houses, rails, bells, and redstone contraptions had been pulled into a tall body. At its top were 2 giant horns made from hundreds of smaller bells. The original siren head stood inside the machine's chest. Its arms spread as wires connected it to every part. The Doomsday Siren was complete. Day 2. The machine tested its voice. One short blast turned the plains to sand. A second changed the river to lava. A third made the moon rise at noon. The last bell was copying each sound into the world as an event. Steve led the group into an old mine entrance south of the village. The charged creeper's cell was beneath the former meeting hall. To reach it, they had to cross tunnels now filled with black wire. Elias could guide them, but each step caused him pain. The signal still lived inside his back. Near the first junction, he fell to his knees. "It knows we are here," he said. Small siren heads crawled from holes in the walls. Nia threw harming potions while Steve and Tessa fought with swords. The creatures broke apart easily, but each released a copied scream. The main machine heard those screams. A huge drill made from the old watchtower pushed into the earth above them. They ran deeper. At the mob museum, glass cells were shattered. Skeleton horses, a brown mushroom, and rare mobs wandered through the halls. The charged creeper remained in its reinforced chamber, glowing blue. Tessa opened the transport system. Water pushed the creeper into a minecart. Steve attached a lead without getting close. The creature hissed. Every siren above hissed back. The drill changed direction. They moved the minecart toward the last bell chamber. Nia and the villagers took a side tunnel, leading away from the village. Steve told them to reach the stronghold and prepare the end portal. If the plan failed, the end might be the only part of the world not linked to the warning system. Nia gave Steve her final potion crate. Do not let it learn the dragon's sound. Steve, Tessa, and Elias continued alone. Day 1. The sky outside turned red. Hostile mobs no longer burned in daylight. Phantoms circled at ground level. Every compass pointed toward the Doomsday Siren. The three reached an ancient iron door beneath the village. Tessa placed a redstone torch. The door opened into a round chamber built from bedrock and reinforced deep slate. The last bell hung in the center. It was twice the size of a normal village bell. Redstone cables ran from it into every wall. Black wires covered its gold surface, forming the shape of a mouth. Under the bell stood Garrick. His armor was burned, but he was alive. Wires held his arms. He begged Steve to stop the minecart. "The creeper will open the chamber," Garrick said. "That is what it wants. The bedrock holds the sound in. If you blast it, the final scream gets out." Tessa looked at Elias. Is he telling the truth? Elias could not answer. Black lines moved under his skin. Before Steve could move the cart, a second door opened behind the bell. Cold air came from a stairway that should not have existed. Elias had described the chamber from visions, but he had never mentioned another passage. Tessa checked the old plans. The wall behind the bell was solid bedrock. The stairway led downward anyway. Garrick's false body remained beneath the bell, begging them to stop. Steve did not trust it, but the new passage worried him more. Black light pulsed below. Each pulse matched the countdown in the sky. Tessa locked the charged creeper's minecart with a fence gate. The core is not the bell. This is only the speaker. They entered the hidden stairway. Elias went first because he could feel the signal. The steps descended past normal bedrock and into blocks without names. Steve's pickaxe could not mark them. His coordinates showed a negative height that should have placed them in the void. At the bottom was a copy of their village. The houses, farms, well, and watchtower stood under a black sky. There was no sun. There was no ground beyond the outer wall. Every structure floated in endless darkness. Villagers moved along the paths, but their faces were blank. They repeated the same actions every 30 seconds. A farmer planted one seed, turned, walked to the well, and vanished. Then he appeared beside the field and began again. "A backup," Tessa said. The last bell saved the village as a repeating sound saves a voice. Elias shook his head. Not a backup, a plan. The false watchtower opened. Small siren heads came out in lines. They entered houses, hid inside roofs, and waited for the loop to reset. Each cycle there were more of them. Siren Head had been practicing the end of the world. Steve saw himself at the village gate. The copy walked to the bell and rang it. The false villagers stopped. The sky turned red. Siren creatures unfolded from every building and pulled the village apart. The loop reset. This time, the copy of Steve looked directly at the real Steve. "You are late," it said. It left its path and approached. Its blue shirt hung loosely over a body made from black wire. Where its eyes should have been were two tiny speakers. Steve raised his sword. "What happens at 0? The copy smiled. "Nothing ends. Everything becomes safe." "Safe for what?" Tessa asked. Every false villager answered. "For the siren." The copies attacked. Steve cut through his double while Tessa placed blocks across the street. Elias directed them toward the blacksmith. The signal was strongest beneath its furnace. Inside, they found a shaft filled with bells. Hundreds hung below them. Some were village bells, others came from towers, ships, and machines unlike anything in Minecraft. Each played a different warning. At the bottom floated a red command block wrapped in wire. Tessa stared at it. That is impossible. Command blocks cannot be crafted. Siren Head had not crafted it. It had found one buried by the world's old builders. The last bell carried its signal. The command block changed the rules. Elias climbed down the bell chains. Black lines spread across his face. It is calling me. Steve followed. Small wire creatures poured into the blacksmith above. Tessa dropped lava behind them and descended. At the bottom, the command block showed one line. Execute as E-Run Siren. There was no such command, yet the cursor blinked at the end. The creature was writing a new rule into the world. Tessa tried to break the block. Her pickaxe passed through it. Steve placed TNT. The blast made every bell ring but caused no damage. "We cannot break it from here," Elias said. "We have to change what it hears." The command block learned from the last bell. Siren Head's final scream would teach it the word after run. If they made the bell carry a different sound at 0, the command might fail. Tessa removed 3 repeaters from the wire and replaced them facing backward. The pulse reversed for half a second. The false village above changed. Houses rebuilt themselves in the wrong places. Wire creatures walked backward into roofs. The command line flickered. Execute as E-Run Silence. "That is our target," Tessa said. "We make the final signal silent." They could not create silence with a machine. Any piston, block, or redstone part made noise. Elias suggested using wool. Skulk sensors could not hear through it, and Dorian, no, not present. Tessa knew wool could block vibrations. There were sheep pens in the copied village. If they covered every bell and the command block, the final scream might never reach the core. They climbed back into the false streets. The loop had changed. Copies now knew they were there. Farmers carried axes. Children pointed toward their hiding place. The false Steve stood on the tower and used Siren Head's voice to direct the search. Steve and Tessa gathered wool while Elias drew the copies away. He ran through the market, ringing a bell. Dozens followed him. Each time they caught him, black lines pulled him apart, but the loop reset his body at the village gate. He died 6 times before Steve filled the first shulker box. On the 7th loop, Elias did not return. His voice came from the tower. "I cannot reset again." The black signal had learned his pattern. The copies dragged him toward the watchtower. Steve wanted to help, but Tessa held him back. If we lose the wool, every death meant nothing. They reached the command shaft and dropped white blocks around the bells. The noise faded layer by layer. The world timer slowed. A second in the false village took nearly a minute outside. Elias screamed from above. Then his voice came through the command block. "Steve, remove the wool." The creature had him again. Steve placed the final stack. Complete silence filled the shaft. Even their footsteps made no sound. The command changed to silence and held. The copied village began to dissolve. Hearths became floating items. Houses broke into clouds of blocks. Blank villages vanished in white particles. The watchtower fell toward the void. Steve saw Elias hanging from its roof. He launched with his elytra, caught Elias, and fired a rocket. The rocket made no sound inside the wool field. They flew back to the stairway while the false world disappeared behind them. Tessa reached the bedrock chamber first. The charged creeper was still in its cart. The false Garrick stood beside it. His shadow moved toward the fence gate. The last bell spoke in Nia's voice. "He is lying." Then it spoke in Tessa's voice. "He is lying." Then in Steve's, "He is lying." Steve studied Garrick. The captain's shadow did not match his body. 2 horns rose from its head. Steve fired an arrow into the shadow. Garrick vanished. A small wire creature unfolded from his armor and rushed toward the minecart. Tessa struck it with a piston, crushing it against the wall. The charged creeper began to flash. Steve pushed the cart away from the bell. Elias jumped onto the track and held it back. The creeper hissed. Blue light filled the room. "Run," Elias said. Steve and Tessa reached the passage when the creeper exploded. The blast did not break the bedrock room. It burned every black wire away. The last bell cracked down the middle. Elias and the creeper were gone. Above them, the Doomsday Siren stopped moving. The red sky cleared. No countdown appeared. Tessa laughed once, almost in disbelief. "We did it." The cracked bell rang. Final hour. The word silence flashed beneath it, then broke into static. Their change had damaged the command but had not stopped the timer. Worse, the command block beneath the world had copied Elias before the wool covered it. His connection now gave Siren Head another path. Black wire burst from Elias's back. It pinned him to the cracked bell. Tessa tried to cut him free. He stopped her. "If I leave this room, it leaves with me." The chamber began sealing itself. Reinforced deep slate grew over the exit. Steve placed blocks under the closing gap while Tessa crawled through. Elias remained beside the bell. "Tell the world I gave it 3 seconds," he said. He pulled every remaining wire around himself and jumped into the hole opened by the charged creeper. The wires followed. Steve saw the dark copy of the village far below, folding around Elias like a closing mouth. The hole sealed. Outside, the Doomsday Siren tore itself free from the mountain machine. Its new body carried half the village across its shoulders. The watchtower rose from its back. The cracked road hung from one arm like a shield. Steve and Tessa found Nia near the mine exit. She had returned after getting the villagers to safety. Together they crossed the ruined plains while the final hour counted down. The creature did not chase them at first. It turned toward the east and released a test call. Every bed in every nearby village exploded. The sky filled with death messages. "It still controls copied events," Tessa said, "only in places its signal has reached." The 3 old warning towers had sent that signal across most of the known map. The stronghold lay beyond the southern tower's range. If they reached it, the villagers could escape into the end. The southern tower stood between them and safety. They had never inspected it. It was a lighthouse on a warm ocean, connected to the warning network through a rail tunnel. The shortest route to the stronghold passed directly beneath it. They entered the rail tunnel with 45 minutes left. Powered rails switched on before them, though no lever had moved. 3 minecarts waited. "A gift," Nia said. "How thoughtful." Walking would take too long. They searched the carts for traps, then rode. The tunnel carried them south at full speed. Redstone lamps flashed overhead. On every 10th lamp, black dust formed a number: 41, 40, 39. The tunnel was counting minutes. At 38, a fourth minecart joined the track behind them. Garrick sat inside. His armor was burned, his face looked real. He shouted that he had escaped the nether nest through a portal made by ruined crying obsidian. Steve did not answer. Garrick's cart gained speed. "Ask him something the siren cannot know," Nia said. Tessa called back. "What did you name the iron golem in Snowcap?" "We never named it," Garrick replied. That was correct. Steve asked, "What did your wife say before she disappeared?" Garrick's face changed. She said the bell was too loud. Also correct. His minecart reached Nia's. He jumped across and held out his hand. Nia saw black dust beneath his fingernails. She threw a weakness potion. Garrick screamed, but the scream belonged to Siren Head. Wires tore through his armor and wrapped around the three carts. The track ahead split. One route continued south, the other turned downward toward a pit of lava. The wire pulled the switch. Steve shot the lever with an arrow. It changed back, but the wire pulled again. Tessa jumped from her cart, slid along the track, and locked the switch with obsidian. The carts passed over her as she lay between the rails. Steve used a fishing rod to pull her into his cart. Nia kicked the false Garrick away. His body struck the tunnel wall and unfolded into a small siren head that ran beside them on thin legs. At minute 34, the main creature punched through the tunnel ceiling. Its hand chased the carts, breaking rails one row behind them. Stone collapsed. The smaller creature jumped onto Steve's cart. He blocked its horn with a shield while Tessa hit its legs. Nia poured a bottle of thick potion into its speaker. The potion was honey mixed with slowness. Its copied voice dropped into a low, broken groan. The creature fell under the wheels. At minute 30, they reached the lighthouse station. The lighthouse had become an enormous siren. Its copper roof had split into horns, and its lights swept the ocean in red circles. Each circle that touched water changed it. One passed over a coral reef and turned every fish into drowned. Another touched a shipwreck and rebuilt it with skeleton sailors aboard. The rail line beyond the station was broken. They had to shut down the lighthouse before crossing the beach. Tessa entered through a service door. Steve and Nia followed a spiral staircase around the redstone lamp core. Black wires had grown through the central shaft. Halfway up, they heard villagers above. The missing four from the first caravan were tied around the lamp. They were alive, but every sweep of light took a memory from them. One forgot his job, another forgot the village. A third looked at Steve and asked what a player was. The fourth was the father who had heard his daughter in the wheat. "She is still calling," he whispered. His daughter was safe with the refugees. Siren Head had kept the father alive because his hope made a useful sound. Steve cut the villagers loose while Tessa opened the lamp housing. Nia guarded the stairs. Small wire creatures climbed from below, using the voices of the freed prisoners. The lamp core held an eye of ender surrounded by black redstone. It was tracking the stronghold. That was how Siren Head knew where they were going. Tessa removed the eye. The lighthouse beam went dark. Outside, the Doomsday Siren stopped and turned its horns south. It had felt the loss. 25 minutes remained. The freed villagers could not run. Steve placed boats on the beach and pushed them into the warm ocean. Tessa built a flying machine from lighthouse pistons and slime blocks. It was slow, but it could carry the villagers along the coast while the three players drew the creature inland. They sent the machine south with the stronghold map. The main siren head reached the lighthouse before they left. It lifted 1 foot and crushed the rail station. The next step broke the beach. Water rushed into the tunnel. Steve, Tessa, and Nia climbed the outside of the lighthouse. The creature's horns were level with the roof. One played the final countdown, the other copied the sea, making waves strike from the wrong direction. Tessa held up the Eye of Ender. It wants this. She threw it north. Siren Head's right horn followed the eye. Steve and Nia jumped south with their elytra. Tessa jumped last. The creature caught the edge of her wing. Steve turned in the air and fired his loyalty trident. It struck the horn's teeth. Tessa fell free, but her elytra tore. Nia caught her with a lead, and all three crashed into a jungle canopy. 20 minutes remained. They moved through leaves while Siren Head searched above. Jungle trees were tall enough to hide its body, but not its noise. The countdown came from every trunk. Parrots copied it, filling the forest with hundreds of small alarms. Nia fed seeds to the parrots and led them north. The birds carried the false countdown away. Siren Head followed the loudest flock. The players ran south and found the stronghold entrance under a jungle temple. The flying machine had arrived. Villagers climbed down vines into the library. 15 minutes remained. Tessa used the removed eye to complete the end portal. Green frames opened into black space. One by one, the refugees crossed. 10 minutes remained when the jungle stopped making noise. Every parrot had gone silent. The Doomsday Siren had learned the trick. Its hand entered the temple roof. Siren Head pulled itself free from the machine's chest. It had lost control of the world link, but the timer remained. The giant structure began to collapse around it. Houses, towers, and rails fell across the plains. Steve and Tessa escaped through a broken pipe. They flew toward the stronghold while the creature followed. Its steps were slower, but its horns now carried the final countdown everywhere. 50 minutes. At Snowcap, villagers covered their ears. 40 minutes. In the Badlands, lightning struck the ruins of the Copper Tower. 30 minutes. Every unloaded chunk around them came alive, as if the siren were forcing the world to watch. Steve and Tessa reached the stronghold with 20 minutes left. Nia had opened the end portal. The rescued villagers waited in the library with supplies. Siren Head's footsteps shook dust from the stone ceiling. If it enters the end, it may copy the dragon, Nia said. Steve looked at the portal. Then we do not let it enter. They built a trap in the portal room. Tessa placed sticky pistons around the frame. Steve filled the corridor with beds and end crystals brought from storage. Nia brewed strength potions. The villagers moved through the portal while the three players waited. 10 minutes. Long fingers entered the stronghold library and tore through shelves. Siren Head crawled underground, folding its body through the halls. Its left horn used Garrick's voice. Its right used Elias's. The portal is safe, both voices said. Steve lit the first bed when the creature entered the corridor. The explosion broke one arm. Tessa triggered pistons that pushed end crystals against its chest. Nia fired an arrow. White light filled the stronghold. The floor disappeared. Steve fell into a lower ravine, caught water, and climbed back. Nia lay beside the portal with broken armor. Tessa was trapped under stone. Siren Head still moved. One horn was gone. The remaining horn dragged along the floor, playing a weak alarm. The creature reached for the end portal. 5 minutes. Steve pulled Tessa free. Nia could not stand. They had no time to carry her and fight. "Go," Nia said. "I will close it behind you." She held Tessa's lever. Steve wanted to refuse, but the remaining siren opened and the voice of every missing person poured out. The sound pushed him toward the portal. He and Tessa jumped. They appeared on the obsidian platform in the end. Villagers waited on the main island. The dragon circled above them. For 3 seconds, the portal behind Steve stayed empty. Then Nia fell through. She had survived. The pistons activated in the stronghold. The portal frame broke apart. A final explosion flashed on the other side, and the black gateway closed. The countdown vanished. The Ender Dragon roared. Nothing copied it. Then the obsidian platform rang like a bell. A black wire had crossed with Nia. It was thinner than string and wrapped around the buckle of her boot. She cut it, but the loose end pushed into the obsidian. Red cracks spread across the platform. On the overworld side, Siren Head had failed to enter through the broken frame. It was using the wire to turn the platform into a new speaker. The Ender Dragon roared again. This time, the platform copied a single note. Tessa ordered everyone off the obsidian. Villagers ran across the endstone bridge. Steve placed wool around the wire, while Nia poured water. Though water vanished in the end, the note grew louder. A square hole opened in the platform. Through it, Steve saw the stronghold. Siren Head lay broken in the portal room. Its remaining horn pointed directly at the hole. Black wires filled the halls behind it. "It does not need the full portal," Tessa said. "It only needs us to hear it." The horn played the dragon's roar. End crystals reappeared on 3 towers. The dragon healed. Then another dragon formed above the exit portal built from black wire and stolen sound. It had no eyes. 2 small sirens grew from its head. The false dragon attacked the refugees. Steve flew after it while Tessa and Nia destroyed the new crystals. His arrows passed through the wire wings. The creature was not a normal mob. Each beat existed only as noise. Steve could not strike a sound. He remembered the wool-covered command block. Villagers emptied their beds and placed wool across the island. Steve led the false dragon lower. Every time it crossed above the wool, part of its body vanished. The soft blocks swallowed the vibration that held it together. The real dragon struck from above and drove the false one into the ground. Its siren jaws opened beside Steve. Garrick's voice came out. "Captain, help me." Then Elias spoke. "I gave you 3 seconds." The voices almost made Steve stop. Nia threw a wool block into the open mouth. The false dragon collapsed into loose wire. On the obsidian platform, the hole widened. Siren Head pulled one hand through. Its fingers clamped around the edge. The end changed it. Purple cracks spread over its skin. Endermen across the island turned toward the hand. Tessa placed an end crystal beside it. "We break the platform," she said. The obsidian platform normally rebuilt itself when a player entered the end. Destroying it would only delay the creature until someone crossed again. Steve told the refugees not to use the portal, no matter what voices came from it. They set every spare crystal around the hand. Nia fired from the main island. The blast removed the platform. Siren Head fell back into the stronghold. The square hole closed. Its final call crossed before the link ended. "Doomsday is not a day," it said in Steve's voice. "It is a sound." The end became quiet. They stayed there for 2 days. Steve defeated the healed dragon, opened a gateway, and found enough chorus fruit and shulker shells to support the refugees. Tessa covered the rebuilt platform in wool before anyone returned. Nia checked every traveler for hidden wire. When they finally entered the exit portal, they prepared for a ruined world. Steve woke at the world's spawn. The sky was blue, grass covered the plains. The rivers held water. There were no black wires and no red message. Far away, smoke rose from normal village chimneys. The Doomsday event had failed. They walked east for weeks, helping settlements rebuild. Snowcap's people returned home. Tessa began designing a new warning network that used colored flags instead of bells or redstone. Nia destroyed every voice crystal they found. Steve never returned to his old village. A crater marked the place where the machine had stood. At its center lay the cracked last bell, silent and half-buried. Months later, travelers built a road around the crater. They placed signs warning people not to enter. Most listened. One young player did not. He climbed down at sunset and found a diamond sword among the ruins. Beside it stood a small copper horn. When he picked it up, a message appeared only for him. "New Doomsday device found." He carried the horn to the nearest village and mounted it on the roof as a trophy. The village had no redstone network and no old warning tower. Its people believed that made them safe. They tied colored flags to every roof, following the new system Tessa had shared across the world. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the 4th, animals began gathering beneath the horn. Wolves, cats, cows, and iron golems stood in a silent circle. At sunset, every flag lifted straight upward. The young player removed the horn and placed it inside an obsidian box. The sound continued from the roof. He broke the roof. It continued from the air. He ran to the bell and warned the villagers, but the bell had no clapper. Someone had replaced it with a small black speaker. The speaker played the hiss of the charged creeper from the chamber beneath Steve's old village. Every villager froze. Far away, Tessa saw a new pulse appear on a map that was not connected to redstone. Nia heard Elias count backward inside an empty potion bottle. Steve woke beside the rebuilt spawn shelter with the taste of copper in his mouth. All three looked toward the same horizon. The Doomsday machine had not survived. Its body was gone, its towers were broken, and the last bell lay cracked beneath the crater. But the creature had learned the one rule that made every warning system weak. A warning had to be repeated. Steve flew toward the new signal, while Tessa and Nia followed through the nether. He reached the village just before midnight. No one greeted him. The streets were empty, but every house door opened and closed with the same slow rhythm. On the roof, the copper horn turned toward him. It played the first warning he had heard 7 days before, complete with the frightened breathing he had made on the watchtower. That night, the horn played a voice asking for Steve. No one answered. The voice tried Tessa, then Nia, then Garrick, then Elias. At last, it used the young player's own voice. "I am here." Across the world, every new flag turned toward the same point, though there was no wind. Deep beneath the crater, the cracked last bell rang once. The square moon stopped. A red message appeared across the sky. Doomsday saved. Below it, a second line began counting upward from 1.